Good morning. Welcome to Eastrose Fellowship, everyone here in the chapel and those at home. Before we get started, One order of business, please silence your cell phones. I'm Phyllis Adams, your worship leader today. Our speaker today is Reverend Sarah Schurr, who is joining us virtually due to an unexpected virus that she is kind enough not to share with us. Reverend Sarah will reflect on changes we face as individuals and as a religious movement. Her sermon today is titled, Times They Are A-Changin'. Eastrose acknowledges that for at least 13,000 years, many tribes and bands have made their lives here, where our church home and our communities now exist. We remember and honor these people who made their homes in this land, the ones here now and those who lived here before. In peace, may we share this land and honor one another. Let's take a moment now and greet each other here today, both in the chapel and online. Please stand and face the cameras by the clock on the back wall and wave hello to our friends online. Next, turn to your neighbors and say hello. Good morning.
I'll work on that.
Get this show on the road. I always hate to interrupt because it's so much fun to socialize and run around like ants in an anthill. Our call to worship words today are by Dan Lambert as we proclaim worth. You are welcome here, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background. You are welcome here to join us as we proclaim worth in our spiritual journey. You are welcome to join us as we sing songs that uplift our very beings. You are welcome to join us in the community as we learn, live, and love together. All are welcome as we worship that which gives us each meaning and value, no matter what you call this building, this hour, or this gathering of people. We worship as one body. Before we light our chalice this morning, I would like to remind our online guests that if you would like to share a joy or sorrow during that portion of the service, you can do so by entering it in the YouTube chat, and those will be shared aloud with everyone. I also encourage you to identify yourself in the chat so that we better can acknowledge your presence with us today. Our chalice lighter this morning is Patty Walsh. Hear these words by Tracy Johnson. We light our chalice this morning, light of our creative spirits, light of our wise souls, light of our wondering and curious minds, light of love for this place, this people, this work. Illuminate our hearts and the spaces between them in this sacred time of unfolding. Little technical difficulty. We have lessons for chalice lighting, by the way. And now I bring you Reverend Schurr and the opening words.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you, if only virtually. For our opening words today, I bring you a classic out of our hymnal from the former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, William Schultz, where he writes, "Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart." Let us worship together.
Please rise as you're willing and able in body or spirit and sing with us number 128 in the gray hymnal, "For All That Is Our Life." The words will be on the screen. And now it's that fun time for all ages. I would like to invite the children to come forward, and we will have a story from Reverend Sarah. You might want to sit so that you can see the screen.
Oh, that's great, because that way I can see you too. If you're way, way up close, the camera doesn't catch, but I wanted to be able to see you. Hi. I'm sorry I can't be there in person sitting right there on the stairs, but it's considered bad manners to come and breathe on people when you're sick, because you might make them sick. So that's why I'm doing this on a video screen. But it's still nice to see you. And I want to tell you, actually I'm telling everybody, the adults are allowed to listen to this story, just so you know. Anybody can listen. So this is a true story out of our Unitarian Universalist history. It's called Olympia Brown and the White Ribbon. You see, once upon a time, there was a young woman named Olympia, and she lived a very long time ago, back in the days when women wore long, dark skirts and people rode around in horse and buggies. Well, Olympia really loved to learn, and she was a really good student, and she wanted to go to school and study religion and become a minister. Well, back then, there were no ministers for women. None at all. It was not a thing. It was not a thing. Only men could be ministers. And whenever she talked about her dream of being a minister, people would just tell her either she was being silly or she was wasting her time, because that just was not going to happen. But she heard, as she grew up, that there were some women who got to preach in churches, even though nobody would really ordain them. Well, there was one that was kind of getting, the word was out about her. Her name was Antoinette Blackwell. And Olympia convinced her to come and speak at the school where she attended, Antioch College. Well, Mrs. Blackwell did come and speak, and Olympia heard her and was super, super impressed. And Olympia came to her after the talk at the school and told Mrs. Blackwell about her dream of being a minister, and that everyone said she couldn't do it because she was a girl. Well, Mrs. Blackwell showed Olympia a little white ribbon she wore inside the collar of her blouse. Mrs. Blackwell's mother had told her that it was okay to dream big and imagine a better world, and her mother said whenever she wore that white ribbon, it would remind her that she could do great things and that she shouldn't give up. And then Mrs. Blackwell took off her white ribbon and gave it to Olympia as a really special gift. And that ribbon reminded Olympia she should stay true to her image of a better future, and that she could be a minister, maybe someday. Well, indeed, Olympia did somehow get admitted to the theology school over the objection of a whole lot of people. Oh my gosh, a lot of people fought her on that one. And then she graduated and was trained to be a minister over the objection of even more people. Oh my gosh. And then in 1853, Olympia Brown was ordained as Reverend Olympia Brown in the Universalist Church. She was the first woman minister ever in America ordained by a major denomination. This is kind of a big deal. And it's a really proud part of our history. And as Olympia Brown said, she always wore her right ribbon when she preached in her church. Always wore it. It reminded her of Mrs. Blackwell and the encouragement she got, and reminded her to stay strong even when people were giving her a hard time. Because let me tell you, as a first woman minister, people still gave her a hard time. And I want you to see something I have today. What's this thing you see inside my stall? See, I got a white ribbon. Yep, in honor of this story. Today I wear a white ribbon when I talk to you, and it reminds me of the women ministers who came before me, and their strength and their imagination and how they made a difference in the world. Because it's okay to imagine new ways of being in the world, sometimes that things can even get better. And Phyllis Adams, who's in that room with you right now, Phyllis has ribbons. Phyllis has white ribbons for all the kids who want one. To remind you, you can wear that when you want to kind of think about there's something you want to do to make the world a better place. To kind of remind you and have that as a little special thing. And I'll tell you, grown-ups out there, Phyllis is going to have these at coffee hour. If you want a ribbon, you can have one too. If you want to be reminded and inspired about how you can make the world a better place in the future, even if people don't believe you or think you're being silly. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your ears. Have a great day.
Thank you, Reverend Sarah. And if the people on the aisle will form a bridge, we will sing the children out. And now, let's quietly sit while we sing thoughtfully our quiet song, number 1057 in the teal hymnal, Go Lift Up.
I'll play it through once and then you'll sing it once.
Thank you. Our reading today is called Stretch. It's from the book Spilling the Light by Reverend Julian Soto. I confess that I have skipped to the back of the book. I really wanted to know what or who or how the story went. I told myself that if I still wanted to read the rest, then it must be good, but that only works for paperback books. Life is a little less linear. And still wanting to know how the journey will go, I'm willing to dance with the suspense. What will become of a failure? What can be built with an honest mistake? Keep paying attention. Keep dreaming and supposing that more is possible. We don't yet know the ending, and if you are tired, then it must be time to rest. Staying curious is like a muscle. We flex, reaching for what we don't yet know, and relax, leaving space for what is yet to come. And now I bring you Reverend Schurr telling us about times they are changing.
Hello again. It's so nice to be here in whatever way I can. This is a very big time in my life. After a social work career that spanned over 30 years and a ministry career for the past 15 years, I'm going to retire. My last day of my working years is June 30th, just 14 days from now. Now, some of you listening today have already made this transition to retirement, and you may tell me that it is great. Some of you listening to me today may doubt that you'll ever be able to retire. I understand that retiring at 66 to bake sourdough bread and play with grandchildren is a privilege, and I'm thankful that I have that choice. I do not take it for granted. I have had a good time along the way. I've had a lot of help in my ministry formation. I began my road to ministry as an active lay leader starting in my 20s. I was a member at First Unitarian, singing in the choir, teaching children's classes. My husband and I even directed a youth choir one year. I was the new congregation organizer for the Y East UU congregation that now meets in the Hollywood district. I served on the Pacific Northwest District Board of Directors. All along the way, I was helped and challenged by other leaders, both professional and lay leaders. And that included folks at Eastrose. I remember working with Eastrose leaders on groups that later became the Mount Hood Cluster. We worked together doing things like hosting General Assembly and District Assembly, stuff like that. As a divinity student, I did a lot of my early preaching at Eastrose to hone my skills. And as this is Father's Day, I want to remember one particular time I preached at Eastrose. It was the day after my father died. Now, his death was not unexpected. He was 92 and had been in very poor health for a long time. But I was in a bit of a blur with feelings running around, and I don't remember what I preached about, but I do remember it went okay, and I remember you were all very kind to me. Thank you. Thank you, Eastrose, for helping teach me to be a good minister. I began my professional ministry serving previously lay-led congregations in Juneau, in Fairbanks, and then at West Hills across the river. I worked for the Unitarian Universalist Association for the last 8 years now. In fact, it'll be exactly 8 years on my last day. I've loved my work in the Department of Congregational Life. I've consulted with this congregation, Eastrose, and with congregations like yours as the small congregation specialist in the region. I've helped with things like visioning and leadership training. Sometimes I've helped congregations through emergencies like natural disasters or the discovery of clergy misconduct. I've supported congregations in good times and bad. There were times when small congregations were pretty overlooked in our association. I and a handful of colleagues from other regions in the UUA have championed the needs of the small and mighty. We pushed for changes in the transition system that allowed for small congregations seeking part-time clergy to make use of the same resources as the big churches when looking for a minister. We've sponsored special programs and webinars aimed specifically at our smaller congregations and their unique needs. I'm proud of this work, and I see it as part of my legacy at the UUA. And as many of you know, I am not the only one on our staff who's retiring. Annie Scott, who's been your primary contact this year, well, she's retiring as well. I want you to know you're not going to be left adrift. Other regional staff are still there to help you, and more folks are being hired to fill these positions. There's always going to be somebody on the other end of the phone. So why am I retiring if I like what I do? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is that I am just kind of feeling done. I want to sleep in whenever I want to. I get a lot of joy out of helping my grandsons. I have 2 now. I'll have a 3rd by this fall. And I want to put more time and energy there. And at 66 years old, I feel the arthritis in my joints every day. I want to travel while I still can and have fun with it. Because someday it will be too hard. And I don't want to miss this window between my working years and my years of frailty. Having done geriatric social work in my career, I know that time comes if you live long enough. And some days I just feel like I'm just, I don't know, done with learning yet another acronym for not yet another new program. Sometimes I'm kind of an old curmudgeon these days. There was this new thing with technology I had to do for a one-day virtual event. I made my password, "Get off my lawn." I don't need to be that grumpy old lady at the UUA. Nobody benefits from that. What I truly feel is it's a better idea for me to make room for some of those wonderful new leaders to come forward and embrace the future. Take us there with bold enthusiasm. So yes, that's also part of why I'm retiring. There are so many wonderful young leaders who are coming up in our system. I feel like I need to make room for them. I mean, I have wisdom and experience, and those are wonderful gifts. Sometimes wisdom and experience are just what is needed. But sometimes I fear that if we only rely on experienced leaders, we'll continue to do things the same way we've always done them. It's new leaders, not steeped in the way we have been doing things, that can sometimes help us innovate and adapt to a changing landscape. In some ways, their lack of deep experience and how it used to be done is just what's needed. And the landscape is changing. You might have noticed that yourself. Not everything changes, of course. Many of our basic Unitarian Universalist beliefs have not changed. We still believe in that universalist message that all people matter and have worth. We believe that all of us are interconnected and that we come together in communities of faith to serve the world and care for each other. We continue to not be a creedal faith, but a covenantal one, where we keep our promises to each other. We still support each other in learning and growing with open minds and open hearts. Changes in society have necessitated changes in our Unitarian Universalist Association and in our congregations. The most obvious example of this was COVID. A world pandemic happened. You probably noticed it. It came on quickly and we needed to adapt quickly. I was so very impressed with the way our congregations adapted. Folks who would never have done a Zoom meeting were suddenly willing to Zoom to church on Sunday and Zoom to a board meeting on Wednesday. I saw how many congregations made that shift to online services in just a matter of weeks. It was amazing. It was amazing. We changed, we adapted because we had to. It was truly a matter of life and death for individual people and for our congregations. Yes, the early COVID was particularly dangerous illness, especially for our older adults. But this change was also a matter of life and death for congregations. Congregations who did not make a change to have some form of online services, they have not done well. Part of my job at the UUA has been helping some of them close their doors as they were just unable to continue their work. It's pretty sad. Of course, the good news is that there are those who did ride the wave of change and have continued to have online services and are now serving in wonderful new ways and unexpected ways. People with disabilities who find it hard to make it into the building, people who worry about driving in bad weather, people who just can't get their kids dressed and out of the house on time, people who live far away, people who are just checking us out and want to see what we're like before they come, all these people can and do attend online services. Church researchers, yes, there are people who do that. There are church researchers out there. They have found that online attendance more than makes up for the in-person shrinkage that some congregations have faced while we opened up our doors again. I mean, that's not in every single congregation, but that's on an average. There are other changes as well. Our yearly national gathering of the congregations, General Assembly, is coming right up. At General Assembly, often called GA, in a week, we'll be voting because there are decisions that have to be made. Now, are your delegates here today? Raise your hand if you're a delegate. Okay, I see at least one hand. See at least one hand out there. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for representing your congregation, helping our denomination, helping make our democratic process work. Now, I'm not flying to GA this year, and neither is anybody else. We are evolving a new tradition at the UUA to have online General Assembly every other year or so. It's been in the works for many years now. And for a while, we just tried to make it easier for people to attend and vote remotely, but, had some limited success. But with COVID, we learned fast, just like our congregations. We successfully pulled off remote General Assemblies for a couple of years there when we had to. It saved a ton of greenhouse gases with less travel. And here's a clincher. It saved a ton of money. And it became an even more even playing field for different kinds of folks. For so long, General Assembly was only available to people who could take a week off work, leave home, fly to another city, stay in a hotel. With the online GA, the retired person, the parent of small children, the people with and without money to travel, they can all have the same level of participation. This is a gift to our association. And like with other congregations, we got better at doing our worship and our business online when we had to. And yet, many folks really miss the chance to travel and be in a convention center singing in person with over 5,000 other Unitarian Universalists from around the country. Some years, in-person GA will still be offered with a robust online option for those who don't want to travel. I've heard about it being offered alternate years. I'm not sure that's a final decision yet. I do understand GA next year will be in person in Baltimore. I'll be there. At this GA this year, we'll have our final vote on the changes to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. Now, changing a bylaw doesn't sound like much, but this one is kind of a big deal. Article 2 is the part of the bylaws that say something about our basic beliefs. It's not a creed, but it is a description of our values. As I am still UUA staff until the end of the month, I cannot and will not give you my opinion about how the delegates should vote. Can't do that. But voting will happen, that's to be sure. Our current Article 2 lists 7 principles that are found in the front of your hymnal and on some lovely posters around your church. The proposed new Article 2 is a list of words illustrating our deeply held values with explanations to go along. There are already some pretty new posters available for this new possible Article 2. Those listed values are interdependence, justice, equity, generosity, pluralism, and transformation. And there's an emphasis that love is the value at the center and the foundation of all of these. Each of those value words has a short paragraph to accompany them, and they tell more about our values that way. Now, lots of people have feelings about the idea of making a change to Article 2. Some love the idea. They feel like a new statement is more representative of today's UU priorities, especially the part about being based in our values centered in love. Now, some people really like the way Article 2 reads right now and just don't see any good reason to change it. And any change at all just feels disruptive and upsetting to some people these days. Again, I'm as neutral as Switzerland. But what I can do is a little myth busting. In our office, we hear all the myths and the rumors that fly around. So that's what I can do here, is just a little bit of myth busting for you. Myth number 1. This has been rushed through and no one had a chance to give input. Ooh, not really the case. There was a vote back at the GA in 2020, 4 years ago, to create a commission to review our Article 2. The UUA bylaws do require that it be reviewed every so many years, and we were frankly behind schedule. This diverse group of UUs was made up. The commission collected feedback at GA and at several other gatherings. They created a draft. They published the draft widely, took a lot of feedback. This not only happened at GA and other big gatherings, but there was a lot going on their webpage. I personally gave my feedback to them by their web form. And this web page and process was pretty widely publicized. I know for a fact that the process was outlined in our Pacific Western Region newsletter. I talked about it with congregational presidents at monthly meetings and other gatherings of UU leaders. It was also in the UU World magazine. The commission used this feedback to make another draft. And at last year's General Assembly, there were amendments to the draft, and we voted to continue the process for another year. This year, the delegates vote to accept the final draft of the document of Article 2. If it's accepted, that'll be our new Article 2. If it's not, we'll keep the one we've got. Myth number 2. If we adopt this new Article 2, we won't be able to use the old principles anymore. Not really the case either. Anyone can use them and draw inspiration from them. They're not going to be banned books. We often call on words from past generations in our faith. Those lovely posters you have now do not have to come down. But if we do adopt the new Article 2, there can be some new words to use as well, and some new posters for the wall. Myth number 3. We've always had the 7 principles. They have a deep history in our faith. Ooh, also not so much. The Unitarians and the Universalists merged in the 1960s, and a set of principles were created. Oh, but they're not the ones you find in the front of the hymnal today. There was a commission appointed at a GA in the 1980s, and drafts and votes and major changes of Article 2 were accomplished at that time, very much like the change process we're going through today, with similar big feelings and drama. The Article 2 and principles we have today are not the ones that existed, for instance, when I first started attending a UU church. They were changed via the democratic process. The last of the myths that I want to share. We have no choice in the matter. Oh, yes, you do. There will be a vote. Every congregation has delegates to vote on this, and other matters coming up at GA. Your congregation has a vote in this. I'm curious how the vote will go. I have to say that the vote to continue the process from last year was very strongly in support, well over 75%. But we'll see how the vote goes this year. I'm curious. As we look at the possibility of changing Article 2, some things remain between the old and the new. There are phrases that stay, like the free and responsible search for truth, and honoring the interdependent web of all existence. Yeah, they're still there. And there's some that are very different, such as adding ideas like we cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. But no matter what changes do or do not happen, we will remain a non-creedal faith. No one needs to promise to believe any particular set of words to be a UU. That will be and it will stay in the UUA bylaws and the bylaws of most congregations. That is an old, historic, honored part of our heritage, and that I don't see changing anytime soon. So yes, times they are a-changing. My life is changing, heaven knows. I'll be baking and traveling more. I'll have another grandchild soon. My job title is changing. I will soon have the job title of retired minister. I kind of like the sound of that, retired minister. And Unitarian Universalism is changing. As a living faith, how can it be engaged in a changing world and not change with it? We have combined those 19 historic districts into 5 regions at the UUA to offer more consistent services to congregations around the association and provide a lot more staff accountability. We've embraced the importance of dismantling systems of oppression rather than just helping the oppressed. This is a really big difference and worth paying attention to, so I'm going to say it again. We work to dismantle systems of oppression rather than just helping the oppressed. The Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt is the second woman president in our association, after 8 men for the first 8 of our UUA office, going back to the birth of our association. Well, they say change is the only constant in the universe. And change is good in so many ways. I sure am glad to not be that awkward teenager I once was. Boy, howdy. Oof. I may have some gray hairs and some wrinkles, but I know and I like myself so much better now. And I'm glad the UUA is changing in some ways too. I'm glad we use technology at hand to reach people in new ways. I'm glad it let me be with you today in a way that was safe for both of us. I'm so very glad we're moving past our attachment to extreme individualism and that supposed intellectual superiority we used to throw around. I'm glad we're embracing our connection with others. I'm glad we're talking about covenants and promises more these days. And we'll see what the future holds. As I said, I, for one, am curious. I'll keep watching and listening, and I'll certainly continue to be a part of our faith. And I leave you with these words from the famous Unitarian naturalist, Charles Darwin, when he said, "It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one that's most responsive to change." May it be so, my friends.
Thank you, Reverend Sarah. Now, if everyone would please rise as you're able, and let's sing hymn number 1020 in the teal hymnal, Woyaya. The words will be on the screen. Half of each week's Sunday collection is shared with a local nonprofit. This quarter, we are sharing the basket with East County Rising Community Projects, a grassroots organization energizing East Multnomah County residents to create equitable, livable communities centering unrepresented and marginalized people. If you attend online, you may donate by visiting our website and clicking the donate button, or you can scan the code on the screen. If you're a first-time visitor, please let the basket pass you by. You are our guest today. We now gratefully receive the gifts of this congregation. Thank you, Mary. As we extinguish this chalice, changes abound around us, within us, between us, in our communities, our neighborhoods, and our beloved faith communities. Changes abound. May we each find the balance point we need as we move through our ever-changing world, the balance between the old and the new, between the known and the unknown, between the familiar and the perhaps bold and risky possibilities that may be there waiting. And now our benediction from Reverend Sarah.
Good people of Eastrose, blessings as you move forward into your future. As the song says, roots hold me close, wings set me free. May the future fly you into some glorious things, and may you rest in peace in your happy nest of the future.
Sarah said, "Wings set me free." And I have a note in my book that the last time I played Skybird, people danced. So, just saying, I wouldn't mind if you did.
Thank you, Mary. That was lovely. Well, I have a few announcements, but first I want to thank all the folks that helped make this service possible today. Our speaker, Reverend Sarah Schurr, Mary Reese for the beautiful music, Dakota and John working miracles in the AV booth, our greeters, and Eric, our coffee maker, cleaners, and all of you for being here, taking part in the service. I have one announcement from John Netherton. It's a reminder that John is happy and willing and raring to train anyone interested in learning how to run the coffee maker next Sunday, the 23rd at 9:50 and 12 p.m. So join the coffee crowd.
Free training.
Right. For other announcements.
Can I make an announcement about the General Assembly?
Oh, yes. Would you like to make that announcement? And
What you were going to announce.
no, I wasn't. So Katie is one of our delegates to the General Assembly.
Hello. I know last week there was some about 10-minute period of talking about the Article 2 revisions, and raise of hands was made, and then the people who were online voted. It was a straw vote, and I think it was split. I'm really looking for guidance, because I'm supposed to vote the way this congregation feels, not the way I feel, although I'm really tempted to vote the way I feel because it was split. And I'm intending to vote against it. And I brought with me the context and timeline of the proposed revision, and also a side-by-side documentation of what is changing. And as we just heard in the service, the principles will be removed, and also the sources will be removed. Now, what's replacing it? Good words, lovely words, but I feel strongly that they don't ground our purpose in tangible, real things like outlined principles, and especially the sources. And now she did say those things aren't going away, or they don't have to go away, but if they're not enshrined in the bylaws, they will fade out over time. And yes, we should embrace change, and those that embrace change survive, but I know that we've survived really well over the COVID years. And the current commission started in 2019. They gave their final report in 2023, and now we're voting to pass it. I don't feel like we've socialized it enough internally to really understand it. I mean, only last year we were talking about the 8th principle and whether or not we wanted to adopt it. And then rather than pursuing that conversation, the GA decided to go away with the principles and replace it with new language. I don't feel comfortable with that yet. So I'm here after service. If you want to argue with me about it, please do. I want to hear what you have to say. Convince me. Convince me to not reject it. I think it's going to pass. Don't get me wrong, I think it will pass, but I would like to be part of the show of force against it, because I don't like the fact that the things that I joined, the reason I joined is being just kind of swept away. And the words that replace it, like I said, are really good words, but they don't embody the values that I liked the way they were written, and I liked the way they were enshrined. And I really think that especially the sources should stay. All right, thank you. Convince me.
Thank you, and you can talk with Katie during the coffee hour. Also, John Netherton is our other delegate, and he'll be available to talk with as well. Well, the service is now ended. For those here at Eastrose are invited to stay and have coffee time and visit and do all those wonderful things. And we hope to see you next week and bring a friend. Thank you, everyone.